Okay. Praise the Lord. Was a hand clap to congratulate me from the heartbreaks or to get me encouraged. Nevertheless, happy Valentine's Day. That is one thing we have skipped this morning. Happy Valentine's Day. Hey. So, yeah, my wife is on the way as well. I was telling Kajina just at the back that, this has sort of replaced, not replaced, but threatened the appointment of what we shall do today. But it will not replace it, so chances are I'll be swift so that we can catch up with program. Amina. My name is Eddy Semakula. I'm humbled to serve at Cross Fellowship as part of the leadership team there. And I'm also humbled to share with you part of what this conviction, the question we are asking today, what are we? With the conviction that this is a question of confusion, that many of us have been part of that world and sometimes even are part of that world. What are we? But first, again, by way of introduction, I serve on this team, and I'm also humbled to be a believer. The risk we make here in gathering like this, friends, is to assume that all of us have a controlling reality that is the same. Namely, that Jesus Christ has come as God. He's lived on earth a perfect life that we could never live. He's obeyed the Father perfectly, died on our behalf, he who had no sin, made sin so that we may become the righteousness of God. That's the assumption we make, that all of us share in that controlling reality, because it's easy to make some of those assumptions, and because of that, we have a worldview from which we even perceive these things that we are talking about, from which we perceive our loneliness, from which we perceive our materialism, a reality in which we perceive our sexual abuse, a reality from which we perceive our fallouts, even relationally. So I hope we share that understanding that because Christ is risen, there is hope. That here and now is not the end. That actually what we see, what life is beyond what is seen. I hope we share in that, and that is namely the gospel. So I hope you have believed the gospel, and I hope that you have come to Christ. Or if you think you have, I hope that is where you have arrived in actually understanding that Christ shapes all of our worldview even before we engage in these things. The controlling realities, as we talk about relationships, are varied, and there are many. So it's important to explore some of those, and even as we ask this question, what are we? We need perhaps to first say, who am I? Before we ask what are we, perhaps we need to first ask, who am I? And maybe even before we ask who am I, we need to first ask, who is God? Again, I hope the gospel brings you there. I hope the reality, that's the controlling reality from which you interpret all of these things that we are talking about this morning. For many people, loneliness is their framework of interpreting all of reality. So on a Valentine's Day session like this, last night I was watching behavior, not recommended, scrolling through my statuses and trying to catch up with the Valentine's feed. And I noticed some song that has been around about a month ago, starts and goes on and on. And this guy just laments and over. He talks about a month ago, I sent you a DM and you did not reply. Now look, what is happening? Where is your boyfriend? Mockery, and perhaps entertaining mockery. But that's the reality that touches, for many people, that's the loneliness they inhabit, and that's the framework from which they interpret all of reality. If a day like this comes and I'm alone, if Valentine's Day happens and I'm alone, I'm done. I'm finished. The Lord has dealt bitterly with me, to use Naomi's words in Ruth. A widowed woman goes away searching for food, and she gets married, adopts a daughter who gets married, and all the sons die, and she's back in Israel. And everything is at loss. And she laments and says, "Call me Mara, for the Lord has dealt bitterly with me." That was Naomi's framework. It was of loneliness, of despair. And there's many biblical characters that share in that worldview where things have fallen apart. You remember Peninnah, praying, Hannah praying for a child. Her lips moving and wailing. There's been a childlessness that is affecting. It's a saying, you would say it's a form of parental loneliness. So for most of us, the controlling worldview is a worldview of loneliness. And that has shaped all of the ways that we interpret reality. Again, keep circling back that we must go back to the finished work of Christ and remember that if this is not our grounding, all these realities will overtake us. All these realities will overtake you. So the other reality that you think about in our day-to-day is a reality of materialism. I was talking with my wife. I keep remembering bits of information that I may have left out. I'm married to Riona. We got married in December 2014. I remember I was the fourth year hustling, and I don't know whether even the hustle was there yet, maybe with papers, exams and all. But by God's grace, we are making 11 years this year, and God has been gracious. But again, there's a reality, another reality that you could be inhabiting, like the reality that's common as well in the biblical characters that you may notice. The reality of materialism, maybe that's how you interpret reality. Everything in a material sense. I was talking to Riona the other day, and we're talking about, I think there's a shop in Bugolobi. You guys probably know it better. Shop, effort, initiative. I like it from a marketing perspective. I like the name. But it's called Material Girl. Effort, shop. I hope the proprietor is not here to spank me. But the idea is, again, I love how it was aptly named. And I think it resonates in a marketing sense. It resonates with a lot of people. Material Girl. Whatever they sell, whatever they put out. Again, but to emphasize the point, perhaps your reality, the world you inhabit, your controlling reality right now, even as you listen to me, is material. Meaning what you see is what you perceive as real. Paul says the things that are not seen are eternal, but the things that are seen are temporary. But perhaps for you, the controlling reality is material. Maybe, who knows, maybe like Queen of Sheba. You come to Solomon's temple and you look at, you marvel. There's a version that says her breath went out of her when she marveled at Solomon's temple and what Solomon had built. Perhaps that material world is closer to the Queen of Sheba than to the God of Israel that Solomon actually built the temple for initially. And these, friends, we must interrogate this even before we begin these conversations, because until we know where we are positioned, we won't know where we are going. Until we know where we are positioned, we want know where we are going. Perhaps this is hushed culture, African culture. We have a lot of quietened things, things that we never talk about. But in the Bible, again, you see stories like Amnon and Tamar in, I think, 2 Samuel, where there's rape in the family and there's sexual abuse in the family. And that, there's breach in the family where a relative sleeps with a relative. And this can be a controlling reality, even as you think about your own life. Perhaps, grace to you, perhaps sexual abuse has framed the way you perceive relationships in every single way. Some incident that happened in the past, we regret it, yes, but also we must come to a point where we believe that Christ can redeem that area. And maybe you've interpreted all of life all of your life based on that incident that happened. Maybe there is a hatred for men. Maybe there is a hatred for intimacy because of what happened in the past. Again, these realities are not our own. Of course, we see them in the scriptures. And maybe ultimately, even as we think about how sin has corrupted the world, maybe your reality is a reality of fallout. You've done the blame game. For example, think of Adam. Adam, in Genesis 3, he sinned. And instead of taking that ownership, he says, the woman you gave me. There's blame shifting. Instead of owning it, he says, the woman you gave me is the environment. People are toxic or, trauma. And maybe that's been your defining reality. You look for all sorts of terms to avoid describing the sin that you have committed. The discord between you and God. And maybe that has been also your reality. Your controlling reality in how you interpret everything in the world. The fact that you broke up and you never owned it, or at least it was all about the other person, but never you. The fact that you've never had the lens to interpret even how far you have fallen short of God's glory. For starters, you, not the other person. Blame shifting. Psychology gives us a lot of this. Our counselors give us a lot of this. Therapy gives us a lot of options outside the reality that I am a sinner. What a wretched man I am. Who will deliver me from this body of death? Have you got there? But thanks be to God. Even before he says, but thanks be to God, he says, what a wretched man I am. Have you got to that point of self-evaluation where you actually recognize that no matter how much hurt has happened in your life, the first thing to say is, what a wretched man I am. Who will deliver me from this body of death? But thanks be to God, who through Christ has brought us to himself. Again, these are the controlling realities here. We could deceive ourselves and talk about ABC, all the practicals. But the gospel is not good advice. The gospel is good news. We could have all the tips. Your notebook could be full here. I could talk about 1,000 things and deal with them squarely. From my experience, from what has happened. But you live with the good advice. But what about good news? Has it refreshed your heart? Are you entranced? Have you found God beautiful more than he is useful? Is he savory to you? Is he a joy? Is he the captivating thing in your life? Would you say with Paul that I consider all things loss compared to the surpassing worth of knowing Christ? Have you arrived there? Has your heart arrived there? John Piper. God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied in him. Friends, it's effortless to begin elsewhere until you have been satisfied with God. Heaven and earth, the psalmist, earth has nothing I desire, and heaven, but you. I consider all things, this is the language of the sages. I consider all things lost. Earth has nothing I desire besides you. Has your heart arrived at God? You ask your neighbor. Let me not talk to myself. Has your heart arrived at God? What have they said? Friends, First Peter speaks of these things. First Peter says, Christ died to bring us to God. There is a vehicle aspect to God, to salvation. Christ died to bring us to God. There's a reconciliation aspect to these things. And this could offend you. This could sound like foolishness, just like it was for Paul's day. And I'm sorry. The exits are open, but we begin there. If it's foolishness to you, you are not in yet. Jesus tells Nicodemus, unless a man is born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. He doesn't say unless a man is married, or unless a man is dating right, or unless a man does not send sexts. You call them sexting. Unless a man does not sext, he will see the kingdom of God. Unless a man is self-controlled. Now, all those things are good. The behavioral part is good. But he says, unless a man is born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. Born again from above. That's the miracle we need, friends, to interpret this reality. What are we? What are we? So the goal of my talk today is to really to demonstrate to you that every relationship struggle, including the one you are in right now, every relationship struggle, or every struggle that you will soon face, if you haven't, is what God is going to bring about, is what God is going to use to bring about salvation for you, ultimately, and others. Every relationship struggle. This is a question of confusion. What are we? Again, we are aligning our dating expectations. The key word there is aligning. When you align with something. There's a reality. Again, back to controlling reality. There's a reality we are aligning to. Aligning our dating expectations in light of what God has revealed. The beauty of marriage, the permanence of marriage, the covenant nature of marriage. What marriage images, Ephesians 5. Christ and the church. The gospel lived out among two people of opposite sexes who were born in very different worlds, have different appetites, shapings, influences, and they come together and they say, till death do us apart. But first, they date. And they ask these questions of what are we? At some point, what are we? If you're honest with yourself, you've reached at that point, or you will soon reach, where the breakup is given with terms like this. Someone breaks up and says, it's not really you, it's me. It wasn't your fault, it's just me. I just don't. Confusion, questions of confusion. What are we? You have changed. So we can't move on. You have changed. Heartache. Shared by even biblical figures. Call me Mara, for the Lord has dealt bitterly with me. The Lord, the God of Israel, dealing bitterly with who? His people. Call me Mara. To use Paul's language. 3 times I asked that this stone may be taken away from me. 3 times. Paul asked 3 times. My heartbreaks were 3, so that's why I'm reminded of that. But God said, my grace is sufficient. For when you are weak, you are strong. We are not compatible anymore. Questions of confusion. We can't move on like this. We are not compatible. Compatibility. Like a plug goes in a socket. That is how we are supposed to move. 3 plugs, not 3 plugs in 3 holes. Not 2 plugs in 2. So we are not compatible. Bam. It's cut off. I do not see a future with you. I'm not prophetic enough to see where is this headed. You are very insecure. Sounds like Adam, the woman you gave me. Maybe. You are too controlling. Questions of confusion. What are we? Tulikuchi na ye. Translated. Tulikuchi na ye. Again, wondering, I need to focus on myself and my school. Good things, career. need to focus on my career. Tuli kuchi naye. I'm trying to discover myself. So maybe the relationship came too early and interrupted the what? The self-discovery. Again, what are we asked in the context of who am I? Who am I asked in the context of who is God? And those are the questions that settle us. I no longer feel the same way. Butterflies, Someone talked about them becoming worms. The butterfly have become worms. I no longer feel the same way. It's gone. The fields are gone. There is no chemistry. My friends do not approve of you. Man-centeredness. This whole thing is built to perform before people, to perform before men. My relationships is on a stage before men. So if they don't approve, I'm out of this. Questions of what are we? Our energy is unmatched. Our energy is unmatched. It's interesting the amount of vocabulary, that unbiblical vocabulary that sometimes sneaks into our worldviews. Energy. Our energy is unmatched. I sense unequal effort from either side. We want different things. You want this, I want this. Relational confusion that is brought about at root because we have fallen short of God's glory. Do you recognize that? Is that where you start in assessing the questions of confusion? What are we? Tulikuchi na ye. Sorry if you don't understand Luganda, but that's the same, right? Tulikuchi na ye. What's going on? You aren't my type anymore. There was an original type that was departed from. I lost feelings or attraction, met someone else who is better, until that journey also begins. At some point you realize that maybe better needed to be redefined. You deserve better than me. This is polite, even humble. Even humble. You deserve better than me. I'm not ready for something serious now. I'm not ready for something serious now. I'm just 21. My life is already unserious. So, why are you inviting me on this journey? I'm not ready for something serious now. Friends, we can come up with all of these. You're too good for me. I feel pressured. That is another humble way. You're too good for me. I feel pressured. I need some space. Language that camouflages the intensity and the difficulty of relationships that we are not bringing under God. I feel like we rushed into this. Retrospect. I feel like we rushed into this. I'm in, but I feel like we've moved, we have said things, but there's another examination. Now, all these things can have healthy aspects. These are not ultimately bad excuses, ultimately. But we are saying they represent a world from which we come from and ask, what are we, God? Like Tulikuchi, why are we even into this in the first place? Why did I even sign up? But we also see that this brokenness comes from way past us. I just want peace, not stress. Even poetic, so to speak. I just want peace, but not stress. Genesis 3:12, Adam is already shown to us that instead of owning up his sin and taking his responsibility, he says, the woman you gave me plucked the fruit, initiated the process of us disobeying God. She plucked the fruit, gave me, and I ate. So God That is why we disobeyed you and ate of the fruit in the garden that was not supposed to eat. There's an excuse. Whether it's therapeutic language, like I want peace, not stress, or I want this or that, that's the reality. But that's theory, right? The theory is always different from the practical. I come, like I was introduced, I come as one with 3 heartbreaks before I got married to Riona, and someone whose heart was broken before. I've written about that in an extended way, and not in the sense that I have necessarily, I'm exceptional in some way, but to share my lived experience. And I was even just, as I was thinking about this, I was like, I need to thank some of the people who have been part of my journey, even relational journey. He's not here, but there's a guy called Chris in Sibirwa Hall, must have been 2009, when I first tested what it meant to experience a heartbreak. And my wife would be here to approve. She knows bits and bits of the story, so in a way, it's good that she's not here so far. Yet, at least. But nothing alarming. I had been in a situationship with a girl who I can openly disclose as called Loy. Supposed to say, ow. Right? The moment is thick. And we had moved on. We had been in a Christian environment. And we made a lot of assumptions. We were, I've heard they are called push buddies lately. Is that the same as escorting someone? Pushing ministry from Bible study and all of that. We had been part of that journey, and there was a hostel down in Chikoni called Grand Hostel, and Loy was the person. I would walk her over there, we would be in groups, and really the fervency was there, the flavor was there. But there was never a clarity on where this thing was going. And that was about to bite me. Even as I enjoyed the momentum, that was about to bite me. Sometime down the road, I was of course, passionate young Christian man, just encountered what it means to be in community, attending Conscious Connections of 2009. Just discovered what it means to be part of a people saved and loving God. So there was a safety around it. And we were moving on. But I loved the butterflies. And I didn't interrogate the worms that would be coming. I didn't make anything clear. But I enjoyed the momentum. At some point, of course, my antennas went up. But I couldn't prove that there was someone else. You know when your antennas go up and you can't prove, but you know that there's something fishy. But anyway, you continue anyway because you are avoiding the hard conversations of what are we? Tulikuchi. The thing is building momentum. The butterflies are there, but there is no examination of the worms. To use your language, sir. It came to a halt at some point. I remember, I think I'd gone to pick a snack from Wandegea, 2009, thereabouts, one evening. And then it was just plain clear. I spotted a couple that seemed familiar. From a distance, and that was not usual. Their proximity to each other, what was happening from a distance as I could perceive it, was clear in my heart that my red flags before were getting a confirmation. Lord had moved on. I can speak about it now, years later. Some of you were born in 2009, so you are thinking, tulikuchi na. But again, Remember walking into Chris's room, Chris in Sibirwa Hall, Makerere University, and just saying, I was a day student, but I knew I would not go back to, because at home I lived alone. I knew I would not go back to that room and handle what I had seen, because everything came to a culmination that I had been heartbroken, and Loy had moved on. Temugamba abamanyi. This is for illustration purposes, right? Yeah. She had moved on. I remember going into Chris's room and just wanting to sleep. I just wanted to sleep. And I got that blanket on myself. And I felt, guys, literally, I felt like my heart was pouring in the blanket. Pouring, literally. Perhaps you've not tested a heartbreak, and that's far-fetched for you. But as a young man, I knew that this was a time to learn my lesson about clarifying things that had gained momentum and yet had no clarity. I was learning it bitterly. It was tough. But in God's providence, friends, I knew God was at work, or at least in retrospect. In the moment I did. Check. 2 more heartbreaks later is when the lesson sank in. That actually, God works all things called according to his name, not to their desires, but to his name. And as I think about this, I think about the courage of Joseph to continue with Mary, for example. We are told in Matthew 1 that Joseph quietly sought a divorce when she learned that Mary was pregnant. In Matthew 1, he quietly sought a divorce. He quietly sought to divorce from Mary. And then the angel comes and says, what you're going to do quickly. That's my version. But essentially, the child that is in this woman's womb is born of the Spirit, redemptive purposes. In spite of Joseph's heartbreak, there was a redemptive purpose to it. And that verse goes on and says, and he shall be called Jesus, for he will save people from their sins. That's what moved Joseph forward. I hope that's the context that moves us forward, even in our confusion of what are we, or the perplexion of a relationship gone south. Sin distorted love, friends, from the word go. And even all the language that we use, whether we are not compatible anymore, or I need peace, not stress. We may get poetic and therapeutic about it, but the reality is that relationships are hard work. And as a people who belong to a kingdom which has a king who expects us to grow in wisdom, even relational wisdom, there is hope. There is hope first to admit that my interpretative framework of this reality, my controlling reality, has been different. Maybe it's been hurt, maybe it's been sexual abuse, maybe it's been loneliness, but God is faithful. And of course, we could go on until the chickens come home about some of the other what are we moments. But even as you think about them, you have to think, for example, when we ask the what are we question, who should we ask the question? The lady or the gentleman? When things go wrong, if you've known the story of the Bible and you've been immersed in it, who do we ask? How do we ask what went wrong? What went what? The man or the lady? The world around us offers narratives that are built, are one-sided, are single gender and narratives. Women are, complete the sentence. Men are single gender narrative. But as people who have understood the scriptures, or who hope to understand the scriptures, at least as revealed by God. This is a Christian meeting, so we are not afraid to say these things. We understand that sin runs, like someone says, the line of sin runs through every heart in the world. Paraphrase. Every heart. It runs in the middle of every single heart of every human being in the world. And that's the corruption we deal with. So even as you ask these questions, again, are you able to say, what a wretched man that I brought to this relationship? What a wretched girl that I brought to this relationship with all my worldviews and all my thinking. But thanks be to God. Grace, friends, comes to those who have admitted, first, for starters, that they can't handle relationships, that they can't handle the complexity of trying to understand someone who was born of a different parent, who has had a series of different relationships, other relationships, experiences, and they seek to relate with them for the long haul. Real quick, some hot button issues that we could touch on. We could give rapid fire answers, but that's the framework. I hope you interpret all of this reality in that framework. People of God, understanding who we are, who am I before, what are we? And even before who am I, who is God? That's the framework from which we engage all the hot button issues. You're probably listening to me and saying, Eddie, just tell me. Today is Valentine's. Just tell me. I just need a way forward. But again, without this foundation, we will keep coming back. The gospel is not good advice. The gospel is good news. And good news comes after we've admitted the bad news, at least essentially, or in the beginning. For starters, common tendencies out there. Of course, vibe without clarity, breeding ground for confusion of what are we. Tuli kuchi na ye. Vibes without clarity, flirting, hanging out, chatting. Now, all this could be extended conversations. All this could be specific sessions. But I'll just give rapid fire thoughts on them. And I know the panel will handle most of them. Vibe without clarity, we've talked about that. Where there is ambiguity in where this is headed. The man is reluctant. He may be engaged physically. He may even go as far as being engaged sexually. But he has never envisioned where is this going in the long run. He has never put a date on which this could materialize before those who are responsible for the girl that he invited in the journey. He has never been proactive about the conversations, the dates. He goes in, he has a good time, but the dates flow in the direction that they want. He has not practiced asking good questions of the person he invited on the journey. Neither has she also done her role in probing this train that I'm on, this love train, this Valentine train that I'm on, of good restaurants, nice meals, mobile money. This train, where is it headed? Breeding ground for relationship confusion. What are we? Vibe without clarity is a temptation. The writers of the Old Testament speak of, as I thought about this verse, it may not necessarily connect with, but I think for me it represented the reality. Without, I think there are versions that say, without prophetic insight, a people cast off restraint. Without prophetic insight, a people cast off restraint. There are other versions that says, without knowledge, people, perish. and so on and so on. But that's the idea. The biblical language, the biblical story is insistent that no matter which direction of life you're taking, whether romantic or not, that without clarity, without insight of where everything is headed, you will lack what? The people will perish. The people could be the girlfriend or the boyfriend, and so on. Hot button issue, number 2. When dating has begun, texting, which has lately morphed, as Gen Zs would call it, sexting. The idea that lust controls the conversation. Lust controls the conversation, and there is a momentum on what the body is speaking rather than what the heart is leading to, or what the mind resonates as the long game. So there's a playing of a short game. Friends, marriage is for consummation. This is the undertaught doctrine in the church, perhaps. Marriage is for consummation. It goes like this. We used to be told in counseling. It goes like this. You grow towards each other and to God. And as you grow to God, you grow towards each other. There is a physical aspect to relational engagement. Whether it will lead to, the moment the sparks are lit, the fires will go on. Physically, we may not want to think about that. Do not awaken love, desires. Songs of Solomon. I beseech you, daughters of Jerusalem, do not awaken love until it so desires. For love is as strong as the power of death. Those are not my words. Those are the words of the writer of Songs of Songs. But he imagines that the moment you set something in motion, relationally, the body goes along. And you better be ready to discern through that. As a guy, better be ready. So unfortunately, in our sexualized world, that is all we cater to. The texting, the view once, images, view once. There you go. And this all pornography, because sexting is the foundation, and usually the warning is, do not awaken love until it so desires. Marriage is for consummation, but also marriage images Christ and the church, and the journey beforehand, God invites to from sexual temptation to flee. What's your even check hot button 3, inconsistent communication, again confusion points of what are we, things that bring to ask tulikuchi nae, where is this headed? Inconsistent communication. It was good early, but it gets worse later. I think I'll point that to the gentleman. I would love to challenge the gentlemen more in this room. I know how passive our culture has made us. And sometimes we think that because the ladies are proactive and they are empowered these days with feminism and all, maybe we'll just carry on and play and do bare minimum in terms of leading, in terms of thinking through. We are going to have a date. Where shall we have it? Will she be able to move from there back to home after work safely? Is that convenient? Have I thought through the meals? Do I know what they sell over there? Will I have conversation starters? Will I ask good questions? Have I even practiced those? Guys, this is us. Because God expects us to lead. It does not start when one is done. Now, initiative to ask, to think ahead. Because no one sets that in motion. And the responsibility begins with a man for you to be able to set that in motion. If you've not practiced now, at least in thinking through what the date could look like, in thinking through the venue, in thinking the good questions you will ask, not shallows, not TikTok videos that you will show. No. Depth, clarity, ahead of time. Gentlemen, you are signing up for an institution in which you are called to lead and to stir and to provoke and to awaken and to guide. I've had biologists and scientists speak of women and the differences between women and men, and speak of, how we are different and how they are literally 80% and above. Their emotional makeup is 80% and above. And for us, ours is logical. On the logical side, we are 8 and above. For them, on the emotional side, they are 80% and above. So imagine those worlds meeting. And you're not using the logic to cater for the idea that actually
but again, as we engage these issues, they are at large. Fear of labels, these are the breeding grounds. What are we? Again, questions of accountability. Let's not disclose this, let's keep this to ourselves, not even the HR, not even the pastor, not even the local church. Can we just keep it within ourselves? Breeding ground. Getting is a community project, friends. And it doesn't happen in isolation. It's another hot button to engage even as we think about what breeds this kind of environment. And, what are we asking the questions of confusion? What are we? Where is this going? Tulikuchi na ye. Comparison with others on social media. Platforming as an idol today. Everything is shared. Everything, every detail. Everything must go out. Introducing a rare kind of pressure to the relationship, even before it forms. If the proposal is public, but the accountability was not public, what's going to happen? You know the answer. The public nature introduces the pressure on the relationship before the relationship has actually developed to the point where you can put it in public and be tested and questioned. But it's out there. The pressure of platforming. I would even dare call it an idol. The fact that we are connected all day long, every moment must go live, introduces a certain kind of breeding ground for us to get into the confusion of asking, what are we? Because then you can get into public relations. I do communications consulting, so at least I have a fair knowledge of that. Where you manage audiences, internal and external. The insiders and the outsiders. So a relationship has not formed, but you're already managing what? Audiences. And then that determines. So you see a spark in the relationship of what's going to go wrong. But because they are stakeholders to appease, because there was a post that went out, that determines, rather than truth, that starts to determine the relationship. Hot buttons. Sorry. Hot button issues. Comparison, so we talked about the pressure of digital. For all is good, for all is beauty. And don't be lost, don't let the idea be lost on you that actually can introduce a dynamic to the way you relate that will actually cause you to perhaps introduce some new pressures to the relationship. Public proposals and all of that, and all the good that comes out of them. The hope is that you're already accountable. The hope is that you start under an older couple before you post. The hope is that you've had some difficult conversations, that you have fought a bit in quotes. At least you fought a bit before you post. That's the hope. Because there's a cracks to relate to, even before it goes out in public. The hope is that you've had that before you go public. Otherwise, it will come back falling on you. And you will, again, what are we? You will say things like what we said in the beginning. Are those feelings or attraction? You deserve better than me. You are too good. For me, I feel pressure. Don't see a future with you. You are very insecure. You are sure same way. It's not you, it's me. For righteousness. During exit. Friends, these are weighty matters. Relational issues are gospel matters. God is calling us to imitate Christ and the church. That is where all this is headed. And the moment you awaken love, it better be headed in the direction of being consummated in marriage. We risk to assume some of these terms, and our world has done a good job in diluting many of them. But I hope you get to ask even questions of, am I courting or am I dating? I hope. Hot button. I need to think about it, ask my friends and see what they think about you, or pray about it. Eliminating risk. Removing all risk, all possible risk. And now, there's beauty in that. On the other side, there's beauty in getting people in. But if man becomes the center, if the decisive people are actually, you have made them, you're not going to take any risk in inviting someone on a journey that will lead to permanence, a permanence that glorifies God, there's a problem. Playing hard to get, so the man can chase and buy, while buying special gifts along the way, mobile money, and so on and so on. Remember, material girl, remember? Material girl, remember what he wins you with? He will keep you with. Hopefully, he's still there in the long run. Not willing to settle for just anyone. Looking for greener pastures, breeding grounds. If you just come in, we're on breeding grounds for questions of confusion. What are we? Tulikuchi. This thing was started, but what happened in the middle? And we started with a biblical framework and said, you know, you have to start there. But even having started there, you have to engage the hot buttons. And these are some of the hot buttons we are handling. Not willing to just settle for anyone. Unrealistic standards, looking for greener pastures based on a list, criteria you use to vet potentials. It's a worthy thing, it's a noble thing to have a list. It's a noble thing to tick off. I had one with Rihanna. This is not theory. I had one with Rihanna, and I ticked off. I loved certain things about her. But what was the decisive thing? At least the scriptures are clear. Do not equally be unequally yoked. Foundations. Everything else, hold with a loose hand after that. Loose hand does not mean don't consider, but hold with a loose hand. Is your person regenerate? Have they experienced the new birth? Do they have they come to God? The question we asked in the beginning. Have they arrived at God, for God? Are they finding God beautiful or just useful? You know, we do church. We are there. We will attend. But the heart, what's the direction of the heart? The crux of the matter, even after you sign up, in the long run, will be those things. Where are you at? Not willing to settle for just anyone. We've talked about that. Expecting partnership and shared responsibilities rather than traditional gender roles. Dealing with oppressors. Oppression. You know, feminism has done a robust job in just introducing language that makes us think of authorities in a negative sense. So submission, that can be a whole other session. You know, I wonder why it has to be a session when the scriptures are clear. Pending follow-up, yeah? Okay, we shall. But again, criteria, unrealistic criteria. The Bible has a foundation. Do not be unequally yoked. What have you added to that? Does it pass the test of community? If it passes, bless the Lord. Does it pass the test of maybe health and all those things? Yes, but what if beyond that, you have added at least a plot of land, or at least this bond from this family? What if this, that? a mountain of criteria that has no room biblically for you to consider a relationship. Expecting partnership, we've talked about that, and gender roles and shared responsibilities. So you come in with all the power, lady, highly educated, master's degree, over and over, bless the Lord for those gifts. But gender roles and all these things that God has placed to guide and nourish our relational capacity in a covenant sense, in the long run. Again, you're playing the long run. You're not just dating. You're not just at a restaurant. You're playing the long game. I hope you see this. The point here is not to give you some treatment on how to have 6 steps to how to have a nice date. No, these are not 6 steps. We are playing the long game, friends. We are preparing for permanence. We are preparing to make disciples of our children. I have the biggest influence, bless the Lord, over my kids right now. 3 kids, Killian, Kara, and Mercedes. By the grace of God, I have the biggest influence on their lives in how they will live out as disciples of Christ. But it began somewhere. It began somewhere. Hot button, wanting a partner who respects their autonomy and ambitions, giving feminist vibes, treating dating like low-stakes trial rather than serious evaluation for marriage. There are many. We could go into them, but I know the panel will do a good job in exhausting many of those. I just thought I would touch many of those and help us see what the breeding ground for relationship confusion is. The breeding ground that brings us to a point where we ask, what are we? But I hope, my prayer is that, like Joseph in Matthew 1, if you plan to quietly divorce, you are Mary. Let me not even use the word you, I may sound like prosperity. But if you planned to cut it off, if you are saying this is the end, if you are saying we are incompatible, if you've lost hope in relationship, if your interpretive framework for relationships has been sexual abuse, something that happened in the past, and you view men differently, and the fallout, and for you the heartbreak is too recent, and you can't move on, and all these things, I hope and pray that you come to realize, like Joseph did, that the man who was born and called Jesus, and a name that means he will take away the sins of the people. I hope that you see and submit to that reality. Even when the relationship with Mary has been broken, I hope you take all this that we have shared today and remember that actually God's purposes are moving forth. And even in your brokenness, even in your wrestling, even in your giving up as a single woman, as a single man, perhaps this has not happened yet. Maybe 39, maybe you 40, maybe this has not happened. And you can associate with Naomi and say, you know what, call me Mara, for the Lord has determined it, has dealt bitterly with me. The Lord deals bitterly with his people, his covenant people. But again, the goal remains. This is going to be the grandmother of Jesus, friends. Look down the line. There is Ruth, there is Obed, there is David, Jesse. Those are David, King David. And guess who is the second David coming at the end? Jesus Christ. I hope that in your brokenness and in your perplexion of even asking these questions, what are we? I hope you don't just see the moments, but I also hope you're encouraged and courageous to go again if you've never gone before. But I also hope you're not scared. I hope you're not scared hearing this. You say, ha, ha, ha. The way we have summarized these things, will I ever? I hope you're not scared. I hope you get the invitation, friends, to pursue a long-term covenant invitation that God has given us to imitate his relationship with the church. I hope you sign up to be courageous, and I hope you grow relationally wise. Salvation, wisdom unto salvation. The kingdom we are part of, wisdom is a byproduct. It's not what comes before. If you're not part of the kingdom yet, don't anticipate wisdom. If you're not part of the kingdom yet, don't anticipate wisdom. The first thing is to be born again from above. And then wisdom will do what? Seek first the kingdom of God. The fear of the Lord is the what? Not the middle part, not the end, or we shall consider it. No, it's the beginning of wisdom, even relational wisdom. So these things we're talking about, which church are you belonging to? Does anybody know your second name? Can they pronounce it? Has someone sat on your couch at home and asked hard questions? Who knows about your last heartbreak? You got in, but we didn't understand how you got out. I hope those things are being shared in a community of believers. Because if God's purposes are prevailing, we are sometimes being broken amidst those purposes. And the story doesn't end. One day I will tell you about the marriage story. But for now, let's start here. Praise the Lord.
Amen.
Thank you very much. God bless you. There's a lot we can engage. I know Daphne, you probably will pick on some of this. I'm happy to as well plug in. But God bless you so much. Thank you very much.